Here is note 6 describing angle pair relationships. Make sure you put your name, your date, and your period. The essential question is, how do you identify complementary and supplementary angles? So hope you remember that complementary means two angles that sum to 90, and two angles supplementary have to add to 180. So hopefully you remember that from elementary. A new word here is adjacent. There are two angles that have a common vertex and one side that is on those angles. And then if you have two adjacents that are called a linear pair, if their opposite sides that they don't share are opposite rays. In other words, they form a straight line. And then two angles that are vertical angles, the only thing that they share is a vertex, and they have two pairs of opposite rays. So I'll give you a visual picture of the last three, because you should know complementary and supplementary angles. Adjacent angles could look something like this. I call it kind of like the chicken foot, where they are sharing the common vertex and a common ray right there. A linear pair will look like this, where I have a straight line and a line coming off, because they must have opposite rays that are going, the side that they don't share must be opposite rays. And then vertical angles is like an X, where I have two lines in this fashion. And an example of the vertical angles would be, I'll highlight it, the left side and the right side would be vertical angles, because the only thing they share is the vertex. And it says it has two pairs of opposite rays. Well, this one and this one is an opposite ray, and this one and this one is an opposite ray. So the vertical angles are the ones opposite of each other. I'm using that word too much, but that is true. But you also have another pair of opposite angles, is the top and the bottom. Okay, our first example. It says in the figure, name a pair of complementary angles, a pair of supplementary angles, and a pair of adjacent angles. So if I look over to the side, let me get that on the screen. It says complementary. Okay. If I name a pair of complementary angles, remember they must add to 90 degrees. And it's just two angles. So if I'm looking at what I have the ABD is 110, the little bitty angle here, DBC is 20, and then I have MNO is 70. So the only two that I can add together to get 90 degrees is this 70 degree angle and the 20 degree angle. That gives me 90 degrees. So a pair of complementary angles would be angle DBC and angle MNO. If I name a pair of supplementary angles, remember supplementary angles add to 180 degrees. So if I'm looking at my angles, I have the 110, which I'm going to need, that's obtuse. The 20 gives me 130, but 110 and 70 gives me the 180. So I'm looking at the large angle of 110 and the angle of a 70 degree angle, adding together to give me my supplementary angles. So I'm going to have angle ABD and angle MNO. Okay. And then lastly, I have name a pair of adjacent angles. Okay, so adjacent angles. Remember, adjacent are two angles that share a vertex as well as a ray. And if I'm looking at my angles, this one only has one angle, but this one's got two. These are my adjacent angles. So I'm going to have angle ABD and angle DBC. There we go. Realize they share the common vertex of a B, and then they also share the ray BD in both of my angles. Okay, example 2. knowing that complementary angles add to 90 and supplementary angles add to 120, it says, okay, given the complement, angle 1 is the complement of angle 2, angle 1 is 50 degrees, then find the measure of angle 2. Well, complement means that it equals 90 degrees, so that means if I took the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2, it would have to equal 90 degrees. If I know angle 1 is 55, then the measure of angle 2 is going to be 90 minus 55, which means the measure of angle 2 has to equal 45 degrees. Make sure you have the measure, equals, and the degree symbol for your answer. On B, it's kind of the same scenario, except for this time they're saying they want the supplement. Remember, a supplement is 180 degrees. So for this, I would have measure of angle 3 plus a measure of angle 4, and this time they would have to equal 180 degrees. Well, if I plug in 80 for the angle 3 and work my algebra, I'm going to subtract 82 from 180 and find that the measure of angle 4 is equal to, I think that's 98. Yeah, 98 degrees. Make sure you put your degree symbol and circle it. That's your answer. Okay, on the back of your paper we have example 3. It says it wants us to identify all linear pairs and all vertical angles in the figure. So we want all linear pair and all vertical angles. Okay, so let's go with the linear pairs first. Okay, I'm going to make a column and I'll put vertical angles on the other side. Okay, so my linear pair, remember a linear pair basically must form a straight line. It's adjacent angles that form a straight line. Oops, sorry. Adjacent angles that form a straight line. So if I'm looking at my picture, I need straight lines, so I can see that here is one of my straight lines. So I can say for a linear pair, let's say we'd have, let me stick with the other side first. Okay, let's stay with this one here. Let me highlight it so you can see it, because I got too many lines now. If I highlight this line, and I'm looking at the reverse side, I have angles 3 and angle 4. So I know that is a linear pair. There's one set. Okay. Another one, if I look at this line, I have the 4 as well as the 5. Are forming a linear pair. Remember, there's only 2 angles. So you cannot necessarily address any angles inside here because there are actually 3 angles making up this linear, or this 180 degrees. Alright, vertical angles. Remember, they are opposite of each other. So if I'm looking at my pictures, I see that angle 3 is made up of my straight lines, and also angle 5 is made up of my straight lines. In that fashion, because they both make up this end, that means 5 is opposite of 3. That makes them a a vertical angle. Okay, they have to be opposite of each other, directly across. Now 4 is opposite of this entire angle, but this is made up of 2 angles, so I cannot say that 4 is opposite of 1 or 4 is opposite or is vertical of 2. It would have to be a combination of the 2, which would be 4 is opposite of 1 plus 2, but we are actually doing pairs of angles, so we're not going to identify them here. Okay, Example 4 is more like the work that you're going to be working on, rather than just identifying things. So it says we want to find the measure of ABC and find the measure of CBD. Now this is forming, notice this is a straight line, so that means from E all the way around to A is a straight line. That means it will equal 180 degrees. This little box on the side tells me that this side is equal to 90 degrees. And then ABC and CBD are complementary angles, so that means they add to 90 degrees. Therefore, I'm going to go all the way around, adding each section and setting it equal to its total length of 180 degrees. Okay? I can actually, since I know this side is complementary, I can take the little sections, do my angle addition postulate, and do 11x minus 2 plus, this is the first angle, let me write it down, ABC, plus, I'm writing it kind of backwards, maybe white out and go again. Okay, so here we go. Measure of angle ABC plus the measure of CBD should equal the large angle of ABD. So that's my 11x minus 2 plus 5x minus 4 must equal 90. 11 plus 5 is now 16x. Negative 2 and a negative 4 is a negative 6. I'm going to add 6 and end up with 96 is equal to 16x. I want to divide and see x is how much. 6. Now we wanted to find out what each one of these angles were, so I'm going to go back to the 11 times 6 minus 2, which was this little angle here. I'm substituting it in. And that gives me 66 minus 2, which is 62. If I plugged it into the other angle, which was 5x minus 4, that would be 5 times 6 minus 4, which is 30 minus 4, which is 36. So to answer my question, I'll squeeze it in right over here. Measure of angle ABC was actually 62 degrees, and the measure of angle CBD was 36 degrees. So there's my two answers for this problem. Okay, number 5 is similar because we're looking at this entire distance. This measurement is a total of 180 degrees. That means these guys are supplementary. So I'm going to take the measure of angle ABC and add it to the measure of angle CBD to equal the supplementary angle that is actually ABD. Alright, ABC, replacing it, is 14x minus 6.5 plus the CBD, which is 7x plus 8, and it has to equal how much? 180 degrees. 14 plus 7 is 21x. Negative 6.5 plus 8, adding my constants, is a positive 1.5. I'm going to subtract 1.5. That gives me 21x is equal to 178.5, and then divide it by 21. Gives me my x value of 8.5. Now, take it, plug it back into each section here on the x's, so that I will have, on the first one, 14 times 8.5 minus 6.5. 14 times 8.5 minus 6.5. That gives me 112.5 as an answer. On the second one, I have 7 times 8.5 plus 8. Oh, it's not there. End up with 67.5. So my two answers, I'll have the measure of angle ABC is equal to 112.5 degrees, and then the other one, measure of angle CBD, is 67.5 degrees, and there's my two answers. Alright, on number 6 is find the values of x and y. Now if I look at my setup here, I notice I have vertical angles. One is a y and one is an x, and I can't work with different letters. I have to stay within the same family. I notice here in the top position I have an x as well as the left side, so that means I'm going to be first working with these two values. Going all the way around makes these two angles what kind of angles? Okay, these are supplementary angles, which mean they add to 180 degrees. So that means I'm going to take the 25x plus 8, add to it the 9x plus 2, and set it equal to 180 degrees. 25 plus 9, adding my x's, I come up with 34x. Now my constants, 8 plus 2 is now 10. I'm going to subtract the 10 and have 34x is equal to 170, and then I need to divide. And that tells me that x is equal to 5. There's one answer right there. Now, if x equals 5, if I'm looking at the other side to try to figure out what the y is, I can plug in 5 for this equation and have 25 times 5 plus 8. 25 times 5 plus 8 is a total of 133. So for this angle, here's another set of supplementary angles. I know the right side is 133, so I'm going to take the left side here and do, okay, I have 7y plus 5 plus the right side, that is 133, and I know it has to total, because they are supplementary, it has to total 180 degrees. That means I'm going to subtract 133 from each side. 180 minus 33 is I want to divide by 7, which that's not going to be a nice number at all. Y is equal to, and we're going to go to the nearest tenth. If we get decimals, I'm going to say it is 6.7. There's my x and there's my y for my answers. Okay, here's your independent practice problem. It says that A and B are supplementary angles, which means they add to 180 degrees. And they want you to find the measure of angle A and angle B. Here's the expression. So in other words, your picture could look something like this, where you have angle A on the left side and B on the right side, so that we have 9x minus 12 and 24x plus 60. And they want to know what the angles are. So I want you to work that problem, and then you can get busy on your assignment. And do not forget about answering your summary, which was your essential question: how do you identify complementary and supplementary angles? Once you have that completed, then get busy on your homework.